Rikudo was watching the students chatting from the top of a building. He just wanted to put an end to that stupid game. A man who had previously beaten him was yelling at him, saying he had neglected the cleaning again. There was still a lot of mess on the floor, and when Rikudo looked at him, the man demanded how he dared look at him like that. Kicking him, the man said that cleaning the house was his job since they had raised him after his parents died. The woman watching everything commented with a smile that it was expected, given the kind of parents he had. They were terrible adoptive parents. Opening the door to another room, he found a boy who said it was his fault. Then, intentionally spilling soda on the floor, he claimed that mess was Rikudo's. Approaching Rikudo, who was already battered, he mockingly asked if he wasn't being kind and teased him further. When Rikudo arrived at school, he found his desk covered in scribbles with a vase of flowers on it, while everyone laughed and mocked him behind his back. The teacher, entering the classroom and noticing his desk, began scolding him, asking what he had done to it. Then Rikudo was shoved against the lockers as 3 of his classmates insulted him, demanding that he pay them 2,000 yen every day. In the end, Rikudo was so incompetent that he couldn't do anything. He looked at the boys and clenched his fists, but someone kicked him in the stomach, followed by a blow to his face. As the beating continued, one of the boys called him pathetic, accusing him of mocking them and telling him to ask his parents for money if he didn't have any. While being beaten, Rikudo thought about how life and everyone in it were garbage, but he felt he was even worse. When he stopped hitting him, his phone fell to the ground and one of the bullies noticed. As he reached to pick up his phone, the boy stomped on it. Seeing the cracked screen, he mockingly apologized, claiming his foot slipped. When Rikudo lowered his head, the bully raised his leg to step on it again. However, someone stopped him, telling him to give it a rest. It was Nishi, the star of the Western-style archery team and recent winner of the national tournament. All the students were surprised and the girls were charmed by him, with one of them commenting that he was amazing even when helping a loser like Kurogen. Nishi gripped the bully's shoulder tightly and the bully asked what he wanted, wondering how strong Nishi was as his shoulder hurt. Behind them, one of the boys grabbed a baseball bat to attack the archer, but Nishi punched him before he could swing. With the man on the ground, Nishi remarked that seeing such things on the streets was unpleasant. He then told everyone to leave. Takta and his friends left immediately, calling it nonsense. After they were gone, Nishi crouched near Rikudo and asked if he was dead. He told him to try fighting back, saying they only acted that way because Rikudo did nothing, and questioned how he could claim to be living like that. Standing up, Rikudo turned his back on Nishi, asking what he knew. But Nishi was surprised to see Rikudo standing firm after such a beating and wondered if he had taken less damage than it seemed. Amazed, he wondered if Rikudo had dodged the attacks at the last second. But he dismissed the thought, muttering to himself that it was a movie. Now back to the present moment. Rikudo watched the students laughing, playing, and talking to each other from the top of the building. He sat on the ground staring at his broken phone with a mix of sadness and anguish. Looking up, he said it was all over, that he was tired of living with that pain, and climbed the fence surrounding the rooftop. Reaching the edge, he sat with his arms outstretched, saying he would just put an end to that stupid game. However, lightning began to appear in the sky and circles started forming between the bolts. From the circles, binary code in the form of bars began descending from the sky toward the city, destroying buildings. Phones all around started emitting strange noises, scaring their users and causing the devices to fall to the ground. Kurogen wondered how lightning could appear when the weather had been clear and what was going on. He heard a noise. Looking at the students, he saw one of them screaming in fear as their phone acted strangely. The phone displayed binary codes which began forming a bubble. The bubble grew larger until it took shape, terrifying the student. It transformed into a raging monster that grinned at him. Monsters like dragons, goblins, and other beasts emerged from all the students' phones and began chasing them. Rikudo, who was safe on the terrace, heard cries for help and saw the students being attacked. They were all knocked down one by one, and the boy couldn't understand what was happening. Hordes of mysterious monsters appeared suddenly, all over the world. The fabric of society was destroyed in an instant. It is believed that the global population was reduced to less than 1/10. The origin of the cataclysm was unknown until a certain group of young people discovered the truth. At first, it was just an unknown fact. The monsters emerged from people's smartphones, nothing more. In the world that followed, survivors gave that day a name. Now it is the Day of Judgment. Sitting on the railing of the school terrace, Kurogen wonders if it was true that the monsters from fantasy worlds were abruptly wiping out humanity. Smiling, he says he managed to put an end to it. Below them, several people were screaming for help and being attacked, and he says it was a death dream. Everyone who once insulted or mocked him was being attacked. He was happy and said serves them right, as all who made a fool of him were now in the claws of the monsters, and they could go to hell. Still smiling, Rikudo wonders how that dream could feel so realistic as even people unrelated to him were being pursued. Watching the scene, the boy despairs, asking what was happening and why the dream was so long to come to an end. His life was a disaster, his parents were gone, and everyone around him was awful. Even his brother, it didn't matter. None of it mattered. Now crying, the boy admits it wasn't right. No matter how he looked at it, it wasn't right for people to end up that way. While lost in thought, a noise is heard and the terrace door opens. A goblin enters through it, startling him. It was carrying a head. Upon seeing it, he realized it wasn't a dream. At that moment, he instinctively understood that it was real, absolutely real. The goblin leaps at the boy to attack him with its mashie, and he falls from the railing to the terrace before it can strike him. Getting up, he realizes he is terrified, and seeing the head the monster carried, understands it was the end. Frightened, he wonders if his end would come that way, but his consciousness began to tell him it didn't matter. Because he had already been planning it, he wanted to put an end to this game. Life was trash, and the world was too. Nothing would change if it ended there or in any other way. But he didn't want it to happen like that, and concludes he didn't want to end it all. Then, picking up an iron bar, he blocks the monster's attack. It knocks him to the ground, and the boy says that real death was insignificant, miserable, and pathetic. Knowing it was like that, he didn't want to end that way, so he resisted the monster's attack even more. Aware of this, he starts shouting that he didn't want to die because that wasn't the way he wanted in the first place. Thus, he continues holding the iron bar, preventing the goblin's mashie from striking him. Humans have a state known as the zone. Regardless of the cause, concentration reaches its limits, and he enters a perfect state of control over his body and mind. With this in mind, the boy manages to strike between the goblin's legs and knocks it down. It is said that when someone enters the zone, they obtain a perfect glimpse of the world around them, and they can intuitively and reflexively decide the best course of action. With the monster on the ground, he strikes it with the iron bar. Rikudo sees the goblin on the ground and is shocked by what he did. After vomiting, he screams in despair. His life until now wasn't real. That's why, from the depths of his heart, he feels that he wants to live. The boy wakes up to a voice asking how he is. As he gets up, he notices it was Nishi, who thanks him for being alive. Smiling, he says his head was bleeding a lot, which made him worry. Looking at him, Kurovian recognized him. Dazed, the boy gets up and turns around, and the archer tells him not to overdo it. Looking through the fence, he notices the entire city was on fire. Looking around, he sees some students sitting, desperate. Among them were Takeda, Tani, and Arata, the bullies who beat him, now scared and worried about what was happening. Sakura says it was all impossible, and Uyama, the PE teacher, with his arm around her, says to stay together because he would protect her, and that he would keep her safe. However, the girl was still worried. Staying the scene, the other girls comment that he was looking at her in a dirty way and felt sorry for her. Kuroge looks at a pile of objects, and Nishi explains that it's a barricade made from everything they could find to keep the monsters away. Everyone had fled from those mysterious monsters and desperately ran to the rooftop, where they set up the barricade. With his hand on his face, Kurogen comments that there were still people left behind in the school. From the other side of the barricade, they begged to be let in. Students had climbed the stairs and pleaded for help, but Uyama and another student said they couldn't undo the barricade. When the archer arrived, all they could hear were screams from the other side. Nishi said he genuinely felt sorry and guilty for not opening the barricade, even though he believed they wouldn't have survived if he had. Rikudo told him it wasn't his fault, that no one wanted to meet such an end, and that he too had given his all to survive. Looking at the monster's body, Archer asked if Rikudo had done that, as he was completely rattled and had never considered trying something like that himself. He added that if only he had that kind of determination, he might have been able to save those students. They heard screams and saw the PE teacher telling everyone to assess the situation, starting with the monsters coming out on the phones. Sakura confirmed and showed her phone, which initially seemed to work but was now completely off, and another student showed that theirs was too. This way, everyone realized their phones weren't turning on and Rikudo's was broken. The teacher lamented that they wouldn't be able to call for help like that. Kurovian began questioning what it all meant. The monsters came out on the phones, so everything had to be connected somehow. But no monster had emerged from his phone, and he wondered if it was because it was broken. Oyama said they weren't getting anywhere and suggested maintaining the status quo. He proposed waiting for the police or defense forces to rescue them and ask if everyone understood. Rikudo questioned if he was serious, leaving the teacher confused. He explained that since the monsters emerged from phones, it was highly probable they were all over the city, not just the school. Given the prevalence of phones today, especially in Japan, it was highly likely the entire world was in the same condition. He concluded by saying he doubted the police or special forces were in any position to mobilize. Hearing this, the students began to panic. Nishi then asked if they should secure a safer location instead of staying there, and Rikudo responded that if they didn't want to end up like that, they should do so. Takeda stood up, shouting, asking why a pathetic person was giving such selfish orders. He approached Rikudo, grabbed him by the collar, and said it seemed Rikudo wouldn't understand unless he taught him a lesson. However, Rikudo didn't respond and just stared at him, making the boy nervous. Kurovian wondered what had happened to the bully to make him talk so much nonsense in that moment. The other students agreed with Takeda and started insulting Rikudo. Nishi and Sakura tried to calm everyone down. Takeda asked Rikudo if he was so scared that he lost his voice. But all Rikudo thought about was how the bully looked like a chihuahua compared to the monster on the ground. Still trying to provoke him, Takeda demanded something from Rikudo. who replied that he should stop bothering him over trivial things because it was annoying. Everyone was stunned by his words, and Takeda, cursing, tried to punch him. The archer tried to intervene, but Rikudo grabbed Takeda's arm, caught him by the neck, and slammed him to the ground, leaving everyone shocked by his reaction. On the ground, the student complained about the pain and begged Rikudo to let him go. Calling the situation absurd, he wondered how he had ever been afraid of someone like Takeda. Takeda began insulting and threatening Rikudo, unable to free himself. Despite the insults, Rikudo pressed him harder against the ground. Nishi grabbed Rikudo by the arm to stop him, thinking he was crazy and certain he'd end up seriously injuring Takeda. Looking at him, Nishi wondered if this was the same person who had been bullied before. The other students, witnessing the scene, commented in disbelief. After getting up, Takeda continued threatening and cursing at Rikudo. Irritated, the archer yelled at him, saying this wasn't the time for fights, prompting the bully to back off. Turning to Rikudo, Nishi said it was water under the bridge, and Rikudo agreed. Facing the group, Rikudo said that what mattered most was figuring out what to do next instead of engaging in meaningless fights. Hearing this, the bully kept insulting him angrily, but the teacher interrupted, asking if they could continue the discussion. Nishi calls for the teacher and steps forward, saying that, in summary, there was nothing on that rooftop, and he doesn't know when rescue might arrive or, in the worst-case scenario, if they would come at all. They need a safe place at all costs, as well as food and water supplies, but Kurogane interrupts him, saying that if possible, they would also need weapons. Sakura asks if such a safe place exists, and the archer replies that this was the heart of the problem. Rikudo says they need to check how things are inside because they can't begin without knowing if traveling is even possible. Stegu shouted that he was against it because it was too dangerous, and there could be monsters on the way. They should stay and wait for rescue. The teacher comments that the boy was right, and they should at least check the hallway. The students oppose the idea, asking who would want to walk among monsters out there. Then the man calls for Kurogane and Takeda, telling both to check the situation inside the building. The second is startled upon hearing his name and says the teacher should go to set an example, but the teacher says he will stay to protect the students. The girls agree, saying that if they were men, they should go, and nervously, he insults them. Rikudo grabs the iron pipe he used on the monster and moves toward the barricade. The still frightened boy asks if he is serious, and Rikudo questions him in return. He says the situation will only worsen the longer they stay there. They will either starve or end up devoured by monsters. Either way, it will end here, and he doesn't want that. So in this case, they have no choice but to move. Hearing this, Nishi is encouraged, and grabbing his equipment, says Rikudo is right, and that he will go too, as there might be other survivors. Oyama, scared, says that if anything happens to the boy, it will be his responsibility, and the girls scream at him not to go because it's dangerous. At that moment, Rikudo calls him a hypocrite, and Kurogane says he's glad Nishi is coming along because the Chihuahua doesn't seem inclined, leaving the other wondering about the nickname. Seeing Takeda trembling in fear, he realizes the boy is completely like a Chihuahua. The boy asks if Nishi is sure because, to be honest, it will be a dangerous exploration and the chances of being attacked are high. With a smile, Nishi says he doesn't want to die because he has a reason not to perish, remembering the image of a girl at a window. Recalling his own words, Rikudo tells his friend that he seems reliable, and the other replies he must have his screw loose, just like Rikudo. Somewhat awkwardly, he says he doesn't even know Rikudo's name yet. They introduce themselves to each other, and through jokes, they manage to pass through the barricade, enter. Kurogane and Nishi walk through a corridor full of bodies. The archer comments that everything feels like a bad dream, and his friend responds that it's just reality. The boy says he understands but wonders where all the monsters are, adding that he's not complaining, just finding it anticlimactic. His friend replies that maybe they left the school and went to the city, and Rikudo asks why. Rikudo comments that the school had already been closed, and he suspects there weren't many prey for the monsters there, so they left to find a better place. The archer agrees that this might be true but says it's horrible to hear, and in the middle of their conversation, he notices something. The boy was about to continue talking, but the archer interrupted him. Both hear a slapping sound coming from a distant corridor, so they stay on the edge cautiously. Nishi peeks and sees a goblin in the middle of the corridor. He looks at his friend, and they agree they can take it down if it's alone. Then he draws his bow and prepares his equipment. Keeping his distance, he takes his time to focus and then fires an accurate arrow, which hits the goblin from behind, piercing its chest. The monster, with its high resilience, doesn't go down with the arrow, and looking back spots the archer, letting out an attack scream. The archer tenses, and before he can grab another arrow, the goblin rushes toward him with incredible speed. Kurogane intercepts its advance and strikes it directly on the head with a pipe, throwing it away. The goblin, nearly incapacitated, looks back, trying to recover its strength, but the boy appears in front of it and strikes it multiple times, finishing it off. Nishi approaches the body and comments that his friend was brutal, as expected. He asks the archer if there are more signs of monsters, and the young man says there's nothing nearby and that everything went well. The other agrees. Amidst his thoughts, Rikudo comments that there are monsters against which humans stand no chance, recalling the dragons he had seen earlier. Mishi, confused, asks what these monsters are and remarks that no matter how he looks at them, they all seem typical of a video game. He adds that the monster they just defeated strongly resembles a goblin. Kurogen comments that he has the impression of having seen these monsters somewhere before. Growing more nervous, his companion begins trembling, realizing that if the monster had landed a hit on him, he would have actually died. But with determination, he clenches his fist and says that now, in real life, they are truly putting their lives on the line. The other agrees and adds that, unlike a game, they have no leveling system, cheats, or even magic. They're just ordinary humans. The archer says that Rikudo is definitely not a novice and asks if he had any weapon training or a mentor, but Rikudo gets lost in his memories. He recalls his brother, whom he had defeated in a one-on-one battle, and answers the archer that he never had any training. Nishi asks why he let himself be bullied by those boys despite having so many skills, and Kurogen responds that he doesn't know exactly why. The companions continue advancing and find a room on fire with several bodies on the floor, but they press on. The archer comments that everything is eerily silent and that apparently the monster they defeated was the only one on the 6th floor. Rikudo explains that most of the rooms were training areas, so there weren't many people on that floor. However, there might be more monsters below. They head toward the stairs to descend to another floor, but before going down, Rikudo says he wants to clarify their objectives. Kurogen states that the goal is to assess the situation, and Nishi adds that they need to figure out how many people are in the school and what escape routes are available. The archer emphasizes that they need as much information as possible to take their next steps. His companion says that returning alive with some information is the most important thing, and that, if they are in danger, anyone can leave the others behind to save themselves. Trying to lighten the mood, Rikudo says they are in an emergency situation and that no one should hold any hard feelings about such decisions. He jokes that his companion is acting tough, but before he can finish speaking, they hear a cry for help from the floor below. Rikudo freezes for a moment before rushing downstairs. His companion remarks that he knows exactly what kind of person Rikudo is, someone who would never abandon others. On the lower floor, a monster is walking around. It wields an iron club, resembles a goblin, but is larger and has horns. Tachibana Koton is hiding in a cabinet, trying to make no noise, but through a small gap, she is horrified by what she sees. The goblins are stripping her classmates while they cry out for help, and she thinks she should help them, but knows she can't. One of her classmates begs the goblin to stop, but it goes into a frenzy and attacks her. She closes her eyes and covers her ears, falling into complete panic over what she's witnessing, apologizing for always doing nothing and running away from everything. In her memories, she sees herself in a crowd, watching Rikudo being beaten. He was being assaulted by the class bullies, and she recalls thinking she should stop them from committing such violence. Trembling, she tries to ask them to stop, but the blonde-haired bully kicks Rikudo in the face, and she starts apologizing again. She feels Seiku placing his hand on her shoulder and calling her name. He asks her what's going on and says class is about to start. Barely reacting, she is quickly pulled away by him, who insists they should leave while Rikudo remains on the ground. Tachibana awakens in the cabinet again, realizing she fainted from the stress of everything she witnessed. In a panic, she wonders what happened to everyone and how long she had been there. Amid her many questions, she tries to take her phone out of her pocket, but in her nervousness, it slips from her hand and falls to the floor, making a loud noise. She becomes very nervous, noticing that the sounds around her momentarily grow louder before falling silent. Still extremely anxious, she realizes she hears nothing anymore and wonders if they noticed her, only to be startled by two goblins opening the cabinet door. As the door fully opens, the young woman sees all the bodies in the room and that her friend Misaki is there too. The goblin grabs the young woman by her hair and pulls her out of the closet. Then the monster begins tearing her clothes as she screams for help. Another monster appears and attacks the goblin with a single blow, leaving the girl terrified. The others in the room surround the monster, but with a single strike, it dismantles all the goblins around it. The girl, in complete shock, screams with all her might for someone to help her, and the two young men begin running toward the screams. The monster grabs her with one hand and drags the tied-up bodies of the goblins through a corridor. The girl apologizes and begs it to let her go, but the monster becomes angry and slams her against the wall, knocking her unconscious. Rikudo and Nishi watch the monster from a distance, and the archer becomes scared, wondering if his arrows can even hurt such a creature. His friend says his instincts were right, and the other asks what that monster is. The young man asks if he didn't find it strange that there were so few monsters on the previous floor. He continues, saying the reason was due to this new monster. The boy then realizes that the goblins were being killed by a type of monster that was their predator and stood above them in the food chain. He comments that the monster is much stronger and more territorial, and they have no chance of dealing with it alone. Lost in thought, the archer grows worried about the girl and is startled to see Kurogen getting up and almost revealing their position as he heads toward the monster. The archer asks what he's doing, and the boy replies that he's going to save her because she's still alive. The other asks if he wants to die. Nishi says that even if they wanted to, they wouldn't be able to defeat it alone, and asks why he's acting this way. He questions if it's for self-satisfaction or a sense of justice, that he's putting his life in danger without even thinking straight. Rikudo says that during the break, the archer asked him if he felt alive and reveals that he truly wanted to. But facing death because of the monster, he felt in the depths of his heart that he wanted to live and that he would never let himself fall that way again. He then says he's going to save the girl because he wants to, and being able to think this way is proof that he's alive. Nishi says he seems insane and asks if dying so stupidly by facing the monster is what he calls living. Kurovian replies that he doesn't need to come with him, that it's his problem alone, and in his memory he sees the figure of his brother. Soreno calls him incompetent and says he has no money, no family, and no one by his side. So because of all that, he was dead and should act like it. Rikudo says he feels sorry for the boy, but that he will never be someone dead again, even if it destroys him. The archer interrupts him, grabbing his shoulder, and says he has a sister who isn't related by blood and studies at another school. He asks why he's saying that out of nowhere, and the boy replies that he doesn't want to die there either because she would be left alone. Nishi continues, saying that leaving that girl as she is and running away would be shameful, and that if his sister were in a similar situation, he would have to help her. And he wonders if he would be capable of fighting and protecting his sister, and that it would torment him if he made up some excuse and just ran away. He then reveals that because of this reason, he's going to help Kurogain take down the monster, and together they will save the girl. Kurogain says the two of them are going to do something stupid for selfish reasons and asks if he's okay with that. Rikuno laughs and says the archer also has something wrong in his head, and the archer, embarrassed, says a man must have his pride. After coming to an agreement, they begin thinking about how to execute their plan. Nishi asks his friend how he plans to do it because just going in head-on would be too risky. Kurovian reveals that if the other fights, he has an idea, and with that, the two start planning. The girl wakes up to find herself tied to a wooden log along with several goblins as the monster was roasting them as skewers. The monster, while eating, notices the girl has woken up, and in terror, she lets out a loud scream, prompting the two young men to move and initiate their plan. At that moment, the archer says as he runs that after hearing Rikudo's plan, he's sure the young man is completely out of his mind. The girl in despair begins to think she won't leave alive and that she will be devoured by the monster after being burned in the fire it set up. Crying, she starts saying she doesn't want to die, and the monster notices she's moving again and approaches her. It knocks her down and grabs the wooden plank to which she is tied, carrying her toward the fire. As they get closer to the flames, she panics. However, both notice Kurogain at the door, who tells her to close her eyes. The monster drops the plank and grabs his club. As it approaches the boy with its iron club, Kurogain pulls out a fire extinguisher and sprays it in the monster's face, temporarily blinding it. While the monster is blinded, Rikudo runs toward Takebana and unties her. She calls his name, but he says he doesn't know her and is just helping. In her thoughts, the girl says it's obvious he doesn't remember her and wonders why he would even remember. Kurogain, realizing his knife isn't cutting the ropes, switches to plan B and bangs a pipe on the floor to signal Nishi. The archer understands the signal and is incredulous, realizing they will have to carry out his friend's crazy plan. Approaching Rikudo, Nishi says he's not confident about the plan but will do his best shot and asks not to be blamed if he misses. The monster, regaining its senses, sees Kurogain kneeling in front of the girl. Enraged, it roars, shattering all the windows. Rikudo raises the pipe, and the furious monster lifts its iron club to attack. He thinks that if he makes any wrong move, it will all be over. Observing the attack pattern, he uses a technique called Kiryatoshi to parry and redirect the monster's attack to the side, successfully blocking it. He feels both surprised and relieved. The boy remarks that it's been a long time since he used that technique, but his muscle memory hasn't failed him. Rikudo stands still, holding a metal bar against a demon-like monster. Quickly, the opponent tries to strike the protagonist, catching him off guard. But Rikudo manages to defend himself. At that moment, the boy slightly alters the attack vector instead of opposing the opponent's attack head-on. The battle continues between them. Rikudo strategizes to minimize the impact of the opponent's strikes and counter with minimal force. He attacks the monster's feet. It's explained that this is a technique used in modern kendo. The protagonist remembers his father. He acknowledges that he never forgot the skills his father taught him as a child. Rikudo silently thanks his father for the teachings. A girl watches the boys battle with the monster and thinks it's incredible. Trying to stay calm, the protagonist reminds himself that these are just monsters without proper techniques. Angry, the demon seems to prepare for another attack. Without waiting long, it swings a blow toward the boy. Rikudo defends himself as best he can, using his techniques. Intent on crushing the boy, the monster continues attacking ferociously. Using his skills, the protagonist lands a precise strike on the opponent's wrist. He thinks to himself that the adversary only relies on brute force to swing its weapon. The two continue fighting, growing angrier at each other. Once again, the demon tries to attack with its spiked club. To Rikudo, the monster's attacks seem broad and monotonous. Full of skill, the boy manages to land a blow on the monster's head, but he admits that such a strike would be much easier against a human opponent. The monster screams in pain and appears weakened. The girl observing the scene is amazed that the boy can defend against all the attacks and thinks he is incredible. Showing slight fatigue, the boy still refuses to give up. He explains that even though he's defending himself, the impacts are taking a toll on his body. He knows he can't sustain the fight for much longer as his strength begins to wane. The monster regains its focus and the boy realizes that despite giving it his all, it's not working. Deciding to retreat defensively, he reflexively dodges the attacks. Studying the giant monster, Rikudo concludes that a frontal attack is impossible. He decides to move quickly to attempt a final strike. From a distance, he calls out to the demon to grab its attention. Once again, smoke starts pouring from the monster's ears, a clear sign it's preparing to attack. The opponent looks back toward the girl who is tied to the wooden log on the ground. He grabs the wooden log where the girl is restrained and tries to advance, using it as a weapon while the girl screams. Rikudo realizes he's in serious trouble in this situation. Brutally, the demon attacks with the wooden log. Outside the building, the sounds of the battle can be heard. Things in the environment are being broken. The protagonist tries to run as the monster swings wildly with the girl tied to the wooden log. Rikudo is faster and manages to escape as the demon roars. The girl is left alone, feeling a bit upset for being abandoned. Playground is shown. Two boys are bullying the girl as a child while she cries, curled up in a corner. Someone shows up to defend her. It's Rikudo, and he asks why they are bullying the little girl. Back in the present day, the girl reflects on how the protagonist has always been like that, risking everything for someone else. She cries while still tied to the wooden log. A boy observes from outside and says he's about to jump in and help with the fight. He sees Rikudo defending himself against the monster and thinks the guy is amazing for managing to do so. But he believes that Rikudo is reaching his limit. Walking toward the battle, the boy asks the protagonist to hold on and drag the demon about 10 more meters. His steps quicken as he hurries to the scene. Arriving at the location, his expression darkens as he declares that this is where he'll put an end to the story without failing. The protagonist keeps running, luring the monster. At one point, Rikudo looks back and tries to hit the opponent with his iron bar. Exhausted, he puts all his strength into the swing to strike the enemy, but his grip falters and the demon lands a direct hit. Rikudo is thrown far away. The boy is injured and lies on the ground, to the despair of the girl who witnesses the scene. Nearby, the boy who came to help also sees what happened. Everyone shouts for Rikudo-san. He lies on the ground, unable to move. Watching this scene, the boy with the arrows analyzes the situation as dire. Nishi remembers his friend's advice. You must aim at one specific point and cannot miss, as there's only one chance. And if he fails, the boy will die. As he observes, Nishi is still unsure if he can shoot the arrow. He thinks about the 3 conditions for hitting the target. The angle, the distance, and everything necessary for a perfect shot are not ideal. However, Nishi knows there isn't much time as he could be discovered. Thinking deeply, he wishes the monster would get a bit closer and turn to present a perfect angle for the shot. The doubt lingers as waiting too long might cost him the chance. And while his thoughts are racing, he is interrupted. Rikudo, even injured and on the ground, shouts for him not to shoot. Nishi becomes even more confused and unable to understand. His friend loudly says he needs to be a few meters closer and asks him to wait as he gets up from the ground again. Face to face with the demon once more, the protagonist's actions are observed by the boy hidden nearby. Tied to the wooden log, the girl cries and calls out for Rikudo. Unfazed, the monster approaches again. Exhausted, Rikudo coughs and begins to hunch over. Suddenly, the young man drops to his knees. The demon believes it's his moment and starts shooting lightning from his eyes as the protagonist watches. He gets up from the ground again and places the iron bar in front of him to defend himself. Even so, the young man thinks his legs are weak and wonders if he can keep leading the monster a few more meters. Furious, the opponent growls and roars. The clash between the two continues relentlessly. Nishi is startled by the intensity of the roar. The girl tied to the log begs Rikudo to run, saying the monster will kill him, but he tells them not to worry about him. With a determined expression, the protagonist stares down the demon again. Desperate, the girl asks why and says she doesn't deserve to be rescued by him. She admits she abandoned the boy all this time and doesn't deserve his help. A school building is shown. Rikudo is being beaten by a group of boys while the girl watches. Quickly, she considers using her courage to help her friend. Without thinking much, the girl rushes toward the group and tells them to leave the protagonist alone. Suddenly, someone touches her shoulder and calls her by name. Stato appears and starts talking to Koton. He tells her she shouldn't be involved in something like this and could end up getting hurt. The boy continues, saying she just needs to be a good person and do what he says, while Rikudo keeps getting beaten. Manipulated, Koton says she will do what was agreed upon with the boy. At the end of the flashback, Koton repeats that she has always been a coward and was never able to help her friend. She continues, saying she is tired of just standing by and watching someone like her unable to do anything. The demon tries to attack again. Its growls and roars grow louder and more intense. Overwhelmed by rage, the monster shows signs of preparing to attack once more. It charges at the boy. At this moment, Rikudo notices that the kanbo, the weapon wielded by the monster, has lost its momentum. With the opening, the protagonist seizes the right moment to strike the adversary. The attack is interrupted by the demon's weapon. Once again, the boy is sent flying and ends up injured. Rikudo falls to the ground. Koton is also thrown while tied to the wooden plank held by the demon. She is in pain and despair, crashing hard onto the ground. Seeing Rikudo lying on the ground, the red monster quickly moves toward him. Distressed, the girl begs her friend to run, but he is unresponsive. Without strength, the protagonist acknowledges there is nothing more he can do. The demon towers over the boy and raises its combo to strike him. In a low voice, Rikudo signals to Nishi that the target is at the right distance. Before hearing the words, Nishi is already in position with his bow and arrow. He reassesses the distance and angle and declares he won't miss such an easy shot. Surprised, the monster notices the boy's presence and shifts its focus away from the protagonist. The young archer prepares to attack. Acting quickly, he fires the arrow. The arrow flies straight and hits the demon squarely in the eye. A flashback shows what happened 10 minutes before the scene. Rikudo hands a syringe to Nishi and instructs him to use it. Nishi asks if it's the same thing Sakura had given them before they entered the building to explore, and Rikudo nods. He explains that it's undiluted ethanol meant for chemistry experiments, essentially 100% pure alcohol. They recall the blonde girl handing them the syringe and asserting that the liquid would be useful. Nishi observes the scene and wonders why the girl was carrying something like that. The flashback shifts back to the boys inside the building, where Rikudo instructs his friend to coat the arrow with the alcohol and fire it at the monster. Nishi wonders if it will really work, and Rikudo believes it will. It's explained that alcohol is a deadly potion, intoxicating any organism. Even a few milliliters injected directly into the bloodstream would render the monster unable to stand. With that syringe, it would be enough to destroy the demon. Nishi finds the idea logical but doubts its feasibility. He points out that even a child would know the needle wouldn't penetrate the monster's skin. Rikudo explains that Nishi should aim for a specific point, the demon's eye. He reasons that the eye would be vulnerable enough to pierce, though Nishi questions how Rikudo knows the eye is a good target. A fire extinguisher is shown, and Rikudo explains that he will confirm it using the device. Determined, he says he will spray the monster's face, and if it tries to cover its eyes, it means the eyes are no different from those of humans. The plan is laid out, and Rikudo considers it straightforward. He states he will begin, and Nishi will finish. Concluding, Rikudo tells his friend he's counting on him to make the plan work. The scene returns to the present. With the demon struck by the arrow in its eye, it roars in pain. Pleased with his success, the archer celebrates the plan. The fire extinguisher test confirmed the monster's eyes were fragile. The plan, as simple as it seemed, was effective. Jokingly, Nishi says he scored 10 points as he hit the center of the target perfectly. The demon tries to pull the arrow out of its eye. Still on the ground, Rikudo asks his friend what he thinks about it. Koton once again finds everything happening utterly incredible. Angry, the monster rips out the arrow with the needle and charges toward the boys but starts to stagger. The protagonist realizes the alcohol is taking effect. A loud roar fills the air. Using all its strength, the monster swings its weapon at the boy, leaving Rikudo momentarily disoriented. Quickly, the demon attacks, but the boy manages to dodge. Nishi panics and calls out to his friend. He concludes that the ethanol might act as a poison, but it doesn't kill instantly. Even angrier, the monster charges forward. From outside the building, the scene is visible, with shattered glass and destroyed walls. There's a hole in the wall, and Rikudo notices the demon is heading straight toward it. When the monster attacks, the boy waits for contact, but instead rushes forward and grabs it by the waist. Using the last of his strength, he pushes the opponent toward the hole. He tries to throw it off the building, but it's heavier than he can handle. The boy keeps applying more force. Something catches his attention, and when he looks up, he sees the monster preparing to attack from above. Nishi notices as well and runs toward his friend. He also grabs the monster by the waist, and with the combined strength of the two, they manage to push the opponent through the hole. The demon falls, but Rikudo goes with it, still clinging to the adversary. Screaming and roaring, the monster crashes to the ground. There's no sign of the protagonist. Suddenly, the boy appears, being grabbed in midair. Nishi, acting quickly, managed to catch his friend and prevent him from falling from the heights. Upon impact, the demon breaks the floor and fractures its horns. Koton watches the scene anxiously, but is relieved and happy that her friends are safe. She thanks God that both are okay. Rikudo calls out to his friend, who asks what's wrong. He says what just happened was insane and asks if his companion is stupid. Satisfied with saving the protagonist's life, the boy with the arrows responds. The first place in the national tournament is mentioned, leaving Nishi confused. Laughing, the boy jokes that Rikudo is still out of touch with reality. Koton asks for help to be untied as she's still bound with ropes. Using a sharp rock, the boys manage to free the girl. Nishi asks if the girl is okay, even though she's visibly traumatized, and if she can stand. Before he can finish his sentence, the girl gets up and quickly walks past him. She goes straight to Rikudo and hugs him. Koton thanks her friend for saving her. Watching the scene, the boy with the arrows seems to realize something. He asks the protagonist what's going on. He adds that all the risk was to save his girlfriend, leaving the two young people in shock. Playfully, Nishi continues, saying that for someone dating a beautiful girl, Rikudo is a calm guy, but Koton interrupts and says they are not a couple. The protagonist, confused by everything that's happening, says he wants to ask a question. He then decides to ask who the girl is, leaving the other two baffled. Thinking it's a joke, the boy with the swords says that's too much, but Rikudo insists he really doesn't know who she is. Koton says the question makes sense, as he might not remember since it's been a long time. She introduces herself as Tachibana Koton and says she studied at the same school as him. Trying to jog his memory, she says they were close and called each other Riku-chan and Koto-chan. Hearing the nickname, Rikudo seems to remember. His eyes widen as he realizes she's a girl he cannot forgive. Another flashback occurs and the protagonist recalls scenes from the past. Koton was a girl he wanted to protect, a battle he couldn't afford to lose. In one scene, he pushes a boy who was hugging the girl. He says that was the beginning of the end. A dialogue about a traffic accident takes place where the brakes failed. Rikudo is shown crying in the rain over the bodies of two people who died in the accident. He says a part of him was lost. Nearby, the boy who was with Koton holds a piece that might belong to the car. The protagonist says Sorato had a childish mind, and a diabolical cunningness and coldness. Angry, the boy continues, saying the other stole everything he could from him while remembering a scene where he lay on the ground with his head being stepped on. Concluding his thoughts, Rikudo says that at some point during these events, he died inside. He regains consciousness and returns to the present, ending the flashback. Trembling, the protagonist starts to feel unwell, leaving everyone confused about what's happening. Koton panics, asking what's wrong with the boy. Trying to calm her, he says it's nothing and that he's fine now. Nishi intervenes and says it's obvious his friend is not okay. The protagonist says he remembered who Tachibana it is. He states that he didn't remember they were from the same school while the girl apologizes. She says she wishes she had spoken to Rikudo earlier, but he tells her she made the right choice since nothing good could come from getting involved with the bullying he endured. Koton feels sad hearing this. Nishi approaches and says the sun will set soon, that they can't waste time, and asks if the girl will join them. She replies yes. He acknowledges that she's going through a tough time but tells her she must understand. After all that, the trio starts moving around the school. The girl kneels and prays for a deceased boy. Nishi catches a lizard that spits fire from its mouth. They then realize there's no sign of monsters in the building. Rikudo realizes that now that they killed the monster boss, smaller ones might appear. The trio secures the fire doors and the route to the second floor, which should suffice, but now they must head to the rooftop where others are waiting. Upon reaching the rooftop, they find 4 survivors there. Everyone is happy to see their friends return and calls them Nishi's patrol. A boy runs toward the archer and says he never lost faith in him. Another boy calls for Koton and hugs her. It's Seiju-kun who says, "Thank God you're alive." She calls out Rikudo's name. Nishi notices something peculiar is happening. He asks if the boy is someone the girl knows. Quickly, the boy introduces himself as Seitu Shinjiro, Koton's boyfriend. Sakura is intrigued upon hearing the story. Koton becomes embarrassed, but her boyfriend tells her there's no need to feel that way as their parents approve of their relationship. He adds that he's proud everyone survived. He thanks Nishi for saving the girl. But the archer says the one who deserves gratitude is Rikudo. It's explained that the protagonist is the one who actually saved the girl. Sakura asks if that's really true, amazed by what she's hearing. The conversation among the group continues on the rooftop. Stegata remarks that Nishi said Rikudo defeated Takeda easily earlier and asks if it's really the same boy. Rikudo replies that he should be called Kurogen. A flashback shows the protagonist being grabbed by his collar by his bullies who mock him. Koton's boyfriend then thanks the protagonist, saying the girl has caused him many problems. Rikudo responds that it's not a problem and Seiku assures him everything will be fine and that he will protect her from now on. He asks Rikudo to leave Koton in his care. Taking Koton aside, her boyfriend says she should rest since she's clearly exhausted, but she insists she has something to say to Rikudo. The protagonist and Nishi are confused. Sakura continues to be amazed by what she's seen. Thanking the girl, the archer says the alcohol she provided saved their lives. She begins to explain about the monster and its bodily composition from oxygen molecules to the circulatory system and how the alcohol worked. Nishi asks why she had a syringe with ethanol, and she pauses to think of an answer. Before she can respond, Oyama-sensei interrupts and asks Rikudo to explain the entire situation. After the explanation, the group concludes that the situation is unfavorable. The archer states they didn't find any other survivors apart from Tachibana, which isn't a good sign. The remaining survivors are saddened by the news. It's explained that the lower floors of the building are safe since the fire doors are closed, providing decent places to sleep. Nishi declares that under these conditions, they can endure a little longer. The teacher gives orders for everyone to gather supplies and find a secure base, stating he will take charge of the situation. Two boys mock him, calling Oyama an idiot. A new base is being established by the students. With mutual help, everyone begins organizing a space to stay. Each person helps in whatever way they can. Rikudo is seen carrying the bodies of the deceased on his own. Koton says it's awful of Uyama to make Rikudo carry all the bodies by himself. The protagonist replies that someone has to do it and remove them from the base before they start decomposing. The girl asks what he will do after gathering all the bodies, and he says it will be difficult to bury them all. Rikudo decides to take the bodies to the rooftop. There must be another way to remove them from there. Tachibana agrees with him. Frustrated, Rikudo continues carrying the bag of bodies, commenting on how strange the situation is. One of the bodies he carries is of a boy who used to bully him in class. Lost in his thoughts, the boy believes that all the bullies and even the neglectful teachers deserve to die, and that if everyone were dead, he could laugh deeply. At that moment, Kotone interrupts him. He concludes that he wouldn't be able to laugh, which is the worst feeling. Rikudo adds that he hasn't been able to laugh ever since everything happened to him, and that this might be divine punishment. Tachibana says that the boy is a hero and always has been, both now and in the past. Hearing the word hero, the protagonist is surprised. The girl says she will help him with the bodies. The protagonist asks if she's sure, given that it's a shocking scene for a girl to see, but she says it's okay, that it's something she shouldn't abandon, and the boy then says that in that case she's welcome. Both continue on their way, but someone calls out to Kurogane. When he looks back, the person attacks Rikudo, and they engage in a physical fight, scaring Tachibana. It's the girl's boyfriend, Furious, who asks what the protagonist is doing with her. Angrily, he grabs the girl by the arm and says the boy doesn't need her help to do something so disgusting. Rikudo lies on the ground, watching, unable to understand. Seitu mocks him, saying the boy is clever to think Kotone would do this dirty work, and that the protagonist should be ashamed of himself for wanting a girl to do such a horrible task. Hearing all this, Kotone steps in and defends her friend, saying she offered to help. The boyfriend says he understands what's happening and has no doubt the girl was forced because of her rescue. She asks what he's talking about. Seitu says he will tell everyone about what just happened. The protagonist, though still confused about the situation, remains silent. Kotone tries to defend the boy again and asks why her boyfriend would do something so terrible to her friend, but he tells her to shut up. Rikudo says he doesn't care and that the boy can do whatever he wants. Realizing he can't get a rise out of the protagonist, the girl's boyfriend nervously laughs. He says the boy can bluff like a pro, even though he's about to snap. Finally, he pulls his girlfriend by the arm, saying she has no business being there. The protagonist continues carrying the bodies but looks back. At that moment, Kotone breaks free from Seitu, leaving everyone surprised. She says she's heard enough. Desperate, the boy asks what the girl is doing. Pouring her heart out, the girl says their parents' social standing was why she was polite to him, but she can't take it anymore. The boy doesn't understand and says he thought they would be together forever. She starts crying, leaving the boyfriend even more desperate. Rikudo steps in and asks them to argue somewhere else as they are disrupting his work, but he is told to shut up. He insists, saying he's asking Kotone not to cause trouble, while Seitu keeps asserting that no one will be able to protect her. Shocked by what she hears, the girl says it's bizarre for her boyfriend to talk about protection, and that he used her as a sacrifice to save himself. Realizing he's been found out, the boyfriend calls Tachibana clueless, and she says she's figured it all out. A flashback shows the moment when the monsters attacked and everyone fled. The couple was in one of the school hallways. She says the rooftop might be a safe place and informs her boyfriend. As they approach the location, Seitu trips her. Kotone falls to the ground and is left behind by the boy. Desperate, she begs him to wait, but he ignores her. The monsters get closer to the girl. Terrified, she notices a nearby locker. Not wanting to die, Kotone hides inside. After the whole story is revealed, Seitu becomes enraged, saying it's a lie and that he can't believe the girl said such a thing. But Tachibana remains firm, saying there's no way she could be wrong about what happened. She concludes by saying she can no longer trust the person she once called her boyfriend. She adds that she always thought they should never have been together. Then, furious, the girl asks to be forgotten by her ex and says she never wants to see him again for the rest of her life. After hearing everything, Seitu asks Kotone if she has any feelings for Rikudo. He bursts into laughter, leaving his girlfriend confused. The girl becomes worried about what she just heard. Irritated, he tells her to shut up. He tries to punch her, saying she should only do what he tells her. Before the punch lands, Rikudo steps in and grabs the boy's hand. Once again, he calmly asks both of them to let him work in peace. Patiently, he releases Seitu's hand, who then remarks that Rikudo has always had a different aura, even though he was always surrounded by hooligans dressed like death. Finally, Kotone's ex asks why everyone who bullied Rikudo ended up dead. Tachibana intervenes, saying the boy is going too far. After this, Seitu merely scoffs. Rikudo says he wants to ask the boy a question. Directly, he asks what the slander campaign is against and says he doesn't care, as it won't make Seitu any more important. Angrily, Seitu says the boy is dark and asks how he dares lecture a model student. Seitu attempts to fight and Kotone steps in, but they ask her to stay out of it. Out of control, the ex-boyfriend says someone like Rikudo should leave for everyone's benefit. The protagonist remains unfazed. Seitu continues provoking, saying Kurogane isn't anyone special just because he fought a monster. Rikudo notices that Seitu approaches using Karat strikes, likely indicating a high ranking. Knowing what he's doing, Rikudo thanks him but says he won't fight. He's called a coward but says he doesn't care. Kurogane states that, like it or not, he's a friend of Tachibana's and for that reason won't hurt him. Seitu completely loses his temper at the refusal and still tries to fight. Irritated, he yells that Rikudo doesn't know when to shut up. With years of dojo training, Rikudo knows he can defend himself. He dodges the first punch. The kick aimed at him also misses. Seitu realizes that after Kurogane faced a giant monster, nothing phases him anymore. He acknowledges the protagonist has immense mental strength. After another attempted strike, Rikudo dodges and the ex-boyfriend falls hard onto the bag of bodies. He's shocked to see one of the corpses inside the bag. Mockingly, Kurogane asks if the boy will help him carry the bodies. Even angrier, Seitu grabs a piece of wood. Everyone hears a noise. Looking around, they see Nishi watching them. The archer asks what's going on. Rikudo says it's nothing, but his friend disagrees. The tension between the boys remains high. Nishi understands what's happening and becomes suspicious. He asks Tachibana if she's okay with what's going on. Seitu gives up, saying everything is fine, and leaves the area. Irritated, he walks past the archer, who reflects that Seitu excels in studies and sports. He notes Seitu's obsession with Koton and hopes he won't fight over her. Rikudo asks why his friend is there, and Nishi replies that his task has calmed down, so he came to help. He apologizes for leaving all the work to Rikudo, but the latter says it's nothing. The two exchange a fist bump. Tachibana feels happy about the friendship between the boys. They decide to take the bodies to the rooftop and return later to discuss the next steps. Some time passes and night falls. Everyone gathers in the shelter. The teacher observes his students. A box of supplies is delivered, enough for everyone to remain there for a while. Everyone finds Oyama annoying. Nishi says he's not hungry. Meanwhile, Rikudo enjoys a variety of food. He warns that if his friends don't eat, they'll die. The archer agrees but says he can't eat right now. A scream is heard, confusing everyone. It's Sakura, looking at her phone and wondering why it doesn't work. Nishi approaches her, asking what's going on. He notices she has a phone charger, and the girl says she found it and wanted to charge her phone but couldn't. The boy ponders and says it might have already been used, but Sakura insists it hasn't, as it was still wrapped. They conclude that the phones the monsters emerged from should be collected. Sakura feels sad because she thought she could get online and find information. She continues to lament, saying she wishes she had internet. Koton asks if the internet would even work without power, and the blonde replies it would, as this is a model city for development. Additionally, it doesn't require external electricity to function. Nishi says he doesn't understand any of it, but would like to learn more. Sakura says that if she had a phone, the monster wouldn't come out of it. One of the boys shows her a device. It's Kurogane, who asks if it's a smartphone that doesn't produce monsters. He says his was broken before the incident, so nothing comes out of it. Nishi speculates that the phone might be broken. Koton says the device is the same as hers, and they match in that. Their friend observes and remarks that it's a very old model they used to have. While the conversation continues, Sakura wonders if the phone could be repaired. Kuju considers ways to fix the device. She says she's starting to see a glimmer of hope. Still at the school, Nishi warns everyone that at the current pace, the situation will only worsen, and the food they found will only last 3 days. Rikudo adds that the weapons they have are few, and that the steel pipe is still better than the available armament. The boy with brown hair continues, summarizing that they are all in big trouble. But he emphasizes that there's still hope because, according to Kuju, it's possible to fix Kurogane's phone using the right tools and parts from Tachibana's phone. The blonde girl, with a hesitant and forced smile, stammers that she can probably fix the phone, while other students look at her worriedly. The protagonist sarcastically thanks Takeda for breaking his phone earlier. Angrily, the bully yells, asking what good it will do to fix the phone, only to be rebutted by Tuya, who says that with the repair, they could use the internet to learn more about the situation. Additionally, they could talk to other survivors and gather information about emergency shelters. As he speaks, hope begins to show on the faces of the other students. Koton asks Sakura about the computers, who responds that, like the phones, they are all fried. The rescued girl says that doesn't make sense, but Kuju explains that even though they were off, when the monsters appeared, the connection terminals were destroyed. Grabbing her blonde hair with her hands, the girl says this phenomenon makes her head hurt. Despite being worried, Nishi tries to stay focused and says that only the phone that was already broken before the chaos started has a chance of accessing the internet. He adds that the top priority should be to contact others who were as lucky as Rikudo. Rikudo agrees. With the goal of finding the right tools, the boy with the steel pipe asks Sakura if the best place is really the general discount store. Despite looking doubtful, the girl says it seems like a good idea. Two frightened girls join the conversation and suggest that everyone should head there immediately to look for weapons and food. Sensei Oyama yells for them to wait, saying he's against the plan because it's too dangerous. Kurogane retorts, saying that if they don't go, sooner or later, they'll succumb. The teacher, indignant, stresses that there's a possibility of rescue before the worst happens. The teacher, starting an argument, warns that there are monsters everywhere, and the boy refutes, saying that fortunately, the store isn't far from here. Rikudo emphasizes that if they go by car, the plan should work and begs Sensei to take them. The teacher makes a terrified expression at the request. Tuya says this is the only way, as it's less dangerous than going on foot. Terrified, the teacher, in denial, pleads for them to reconsider the plan. He yells that going is out of the question because he needs to protect the students and that it's for their benefit as well. Concerned, the boy with the bow reflects that this is a problem. Shocking everyone, Koton stands up and decisively says that she knows and will drive. Nishi, surprised, asks how she knows how to drive without a license, and she explains that when she was younger, her grandfather used to let her drive his truck all the time on his farm. Her boyfriend, enraged, joins the discussion to stop her, but the girl tells him to stay out of it. Kurogane asks if she's sure about this since it's deadly outside, and even inside the car it might not be safe, which makes the girl anxious. The long-haired girl replies that she doesn't want to meet her end, but at this rate, she has no idea what's really happening and doesn't want it to end this way. She adds that if there's even the slightest chance, it's better to try. The boy with the steel pipe, with a look of admiration, says he understands her and is counting on her and her strength. Her boyfriend becomes furious. That's when Oyama, equally enraged, punches the chalkboard, startling the students and demanding to know why they are making decisions without him. Yelling, he declares that he is the teacher, responsible for protecting the students, and that he will not allow them to do whatever they want. Nishi tries to intervene, saying something needs to be done, but the man, filled with anger, tells him to shut up. As the students listen in fear, the teacher continues shouting, calling Tuya just a brat, and insisting that everyone should do only what he says. Wait, he adds that if they ration the food, it will last a week, that everyone should wait for rescue, and questions whether the students can't see this is the best course of action. Rikudo counters, asking why the teacher doesn't realize it's a terrible idea. The man scolds him for speaking that way, but the boy persists, questioning where it's actually safe and whether the teacher has seen the monsters. Blue slime begins dripping from the ceiling as the student declares there is no safe place. It lands on Tani. Tani begins screaming for help as the monster takes over his body, terrifying everyone. That's when Kurogin charges at the creature with his steel pipe, shouting that common sense doesn't apply to these things and that there is no safe place. He adds, as he strikes the slime directly, that sitting and waiting will only make things worse. The students question what that thing is as the boy fights the monster. Tani, panicking, continues pleading for help. Rikudo says he's working on a solution and tells him to hold on as he grabs a large blanket. He shouts for Nishi, who responds that he understands. The students observe that the slime can dissolve human flesh but not synthetic fibers and clothing. Then, in a coordinated effort counting 1, 2, 3, one throws the blanket while the other pulls Tani out of the monster. Kunju, terrified, asks if they really managed to get the creature off Tani. The boy with the steel pipe, despite landing many blows, realizes his fear has come true. The monster hasn't taken any damage. He recalls that in most games, slimes are resistant to physical attacks and only vulnerable to magic. He gets the idea to set the creature on fire, but Tuya doesn't know how. Sakura then appears with a flammable liquid, pours it on the slime, and lights a match. She hopes it works. Consequently, a large explosion occurs. The girl notices the monster has evaporated, and Rikudo remarks that fire appears to be its weakness and thanks her for the help. He then remembers Tani, but Nishi informs him that, unfortunately, they were too late. Takeda, kneeling on the ground, desperately calls his friend's name. Sensei appears, confused, wondering what just happened, and the hero asks if he now understands the gravity of the situation. That if they had been slower, everyone could have ended up like Tani, angrily questioning if they're really going to stay there waiting for a rescue that might never come. The teacher collapses to the ground, lamenting, and says he doesn't understand, and that the students can do whatever they want. Leaving the school, Tuya, Kurogane, Kuju, and Takebana eliminate all the monsters they encounter along the way. The four decide to hurry before more threats appear. They find Oyama's car and hand the key to Kotone. She notices that the car isn't manual, and Nishi asks if she knows how to drive it. The girl says yes, but admits she's more accustomed to manual transmission. The brown-haired boy laughs in relief and praises her. Interrupting the moment, Sakura asks if she really has to go. The archer says it's obvious she does, as she's the only one who knows the parts and tools needed to fix the phone. Sweating nervously and laughing awkwardly, the girl agrees. The blonde gets into the car, sighing and lamenting in her thoughts about having lived a short life, while Tuya wonders what she's carrying in her backpack. Stego appears and declares he's coming too, as it's his job to protect Tachibana. The archer warns him not to start any problems, and Seita retorts that there's no need to worry, and that he's not that stupid. Already in the car, he adds that like everyone else, he doesn't want to succumb and will do whatever it takes to ensure that doesn't happen. Nishi notices Shinjuru's jealous expression as he looks at his girlfriend and Rikudo and hopes he won't do anything stupid. The girl in the driver's seat asks if everyone is ready and starts the car. Tuya, excited, replies yes and says everyone is counting on her. Sakura says she's fine, but silently laments that she didn't want to go. The protagonist says everything is set, and they head toward their destination. From the school, the others watch them leave. Then a student suggests they hurry and start burning the bodies on the rooftop, following Kurogane's recommendations. Sensei Oyama, holding a type of sword, strikes the ground furiously and tells the girl to shut up. Angrily, he says he doesn't want to hear about the boy anymore, and he can handle the corpses when he returns because he's the one in charge. He ends by saying that everyone should only do what he tells them to. Somewhere in the city at the same time, the team of warriors drives through streets infested with monsters that try to attack them as soon as they hear the engine roar. Tachibana, panicking, runs over one of the creatures, and Rikudo praises her, comforting her. Nishi, observing through the sunroof, says driving was the right choice because the smaller monsters can't reach them. His expression changes to worry when he spots a massive creature and asks the driver to change course. Sakura, holding the map, tells Koton to go back to the last four-way intersection and turn right. The protagonist, sitting in the passenger seat, says everyone is counting on her, while her boyfriend in the back seat watches angrily. Through the sunroof, the hero with the bow observes enormous flying monsters and wolf-like creatures devouring people on the streets. He shouts that it feels like the world has ended. Kurogane asks if there are any signs of survivors, and the boy responds no. The blonde girl says she suspects other people might be alive somewhere else hiding and that they're the abnormal ones for venturing out like this. Seikyu suddenly orders them to stop the car. His girlfriend complies and asks what's wrong. Tuya asks if he saw something. The boy points ahead and says that about 50 meters away there's likely a convenience store where they could find food. He continues and asks if they shouldn't check it out. Kuju agrees. Rikuto, from the front seat, points out that there should also be food at their destination, but the boy snaps back saying no one asked him. Shinjiro questions if the protagonist is going to say it's too dangerous, and Rikuto counters by asking if his opinion doesn't count. The boy in the back seat, already irritated, retorts that just because Rikuto took the initiative to fight monsters doesn't mean he needs to act like the leader. Mishi joins the discussion, saying that Kurogane was merely expressing his opinion, prompting Sakura to agree and say everyone should get along. Tachibana also scolds her boyfriend, who grumbles under his breath. Meanwhile, the archer reflects on what they should do since there's no guarantee they'll find food at the destination, especially if it's full of monsters. His thoughts are interrupted when the boy in the passenger seat says there's no perfect choice or answer. He continues, emphasizing that he doesn't even know if leaving was the right decision, but now that the dice have been rolled, he plans to give it his all. He concludes by saying he trusts his friend's judgment and that, whatever happens, he won't complain. Tuya, taking charge, says food is essential, that they should seize every opportunity to gather supplies, and asks if everyone agrees. 5 minutes later, they arrive at Honolulu Coffee and ask Shinjiro if this is the right place. He confirms. Sakura tells them to be careful, and Mishi says that if something feels wrong, they'll leave. Entering the place, they're met with empty shelves. However, the protagonist points out one good thing. There don't seem to be any monsters in the store. The hero with the bow reflects that if there's no food, it's because other survivors or creatures have already taken everything. Kurogane finds some canned food that appears untouched. They decide to gather as many useful items as they can find. 15 minutes later, they've gathered a good amount of supplies in bags and look on satisfied. That's when Seido hears a noise coming from behind a door. They open it and ask if anyone is there, but they find no one, just a cardboard box that seems to contain bread. The boys stare at the box, intrigued and confused. Shinjiro approaches and confirms that what's inside the box is indeed bread, getting excited about finding food. Rikuto, concerned, asks him to wait. The boy, irritated, asks what's wrong and emphasizes that he's the one who found the supplies. The hero with the steel pipe counters, saying something feels off. And he continues questioning if it's not strange that there's blood around the box and if it doesn't seem like something happened there. Still irritated, the other guy asks something like what could have happened there, and the protagonist replies that he doesn't know but draws attention to something written on the ground. Saying he feels a bad sensation, he warns that it's better to stay away from the box. The boy in the gray vest, in a mocking and irritated tone, states that he knows the other is saying this but will come back later in secret to take the box and steal the credit. Mishi calls his attention. Holding the box with both hands, the guy shouts that he was the one who found it and that the box is his. Abruptly, a large red eye appears and stares at Seitu, who becomes terrified. He drops the box forcefully to the ground and screams. The girls in the car hear the scream and, frightened, wonder what's happening. That's when Sakura asks Koton to duck down and hide. Monsters that look like giant lizards, carrying spears with heads on the tips, appear making some kind of growling noise. Scared, the girls huddle inside the car. Meanwhile, a creature with one eye and 9 tentacles attacks the boys inside the store. Rikuto charges at it with his steel pipe and hits it squarely, while the boy in the vest watches with an irritated expression. The protagonist, panting and looking at the box, concludes that the monster must be a mimic, and it reminds him of a creature he had only seen in a game. Nishi shouts, alerting that something is happening outside. The hidden boys observe the fantastic being standing still. Kurogane says that the being seems to be a lizard man who came to investigate something, and his friend says that's bad since there are many of them. Seeing that they haven't been spotted, both decide to wait for the monsters to move on because they couldn't handle 5 of them. Tuya wonders if the girls are okay. One of the lizard men approaches the car and breaks the window with his spear. Koton screams, and the boys, terrified, don't know what to do now that the girls have been discovered and decide to go forward together. All 3 of them. Seido, terrified, can't move, and the boys decide to go without him. Kuju, being pulled out of the car, tries to convince the monster by shouting that she isn't appetizing. Outside the vehicle, they face their imminent end when suddenly, one of the monsters is taken down. Rikuto appears with his steel pipe, bravely striking the creatures. He shouts to Tachibana to take care of Sakura, and if things go wrong, to leave him behind and escape with Nishi. Surrounded by 3 lizard men, the protagonist finds himself cornered. That's when an arrow hits one of the monsters and brings it down. Tuya, hidden, thinks that if he's discovered, he'll lose his advantage and 1 against 3 will be too much, just as his friend had said. The boy hero wonders if this will be his end. And fighting, he refuses to fall. A boy appears on the roof of the store and hits one of the monsters directly with the rocks, surprising Rakuto. He continues throwing rocks with all his might, while Nishi shoots his arrows. Another boy with platinum hair appears and takes down another creature with brass knuckles. Even without knowing those boys, Kurogane seizes the chance to finish off the lizard men. Seeing all of them defeated, the protagonist thanks one of the unknown boys for saving his skin. The girls, happy to have found other survivors, run toward them, while Tuya notices that these boys are from the same school because of their uniforms. Remembering that the place is dangerous, he says everyone must leave quickly. Then the boy with green eyes suggests they come with them to a hideout. He asks if there's any problem with the invitation to the other boy, referring to him as Senpei, who makes a face showing he didn't like the idea much. Nishi, relieved, says he thought it would all end there, and Rikuto states that if you don't give up, luck can knock on your door. Tachibana then tells everyone to get in the car, and the boy throwing rocks is surprised that she can drive. 10 minutes pass, and the strangers introduce themselves. The red-haired boy says his name is Aiz Tabata, and his friend is called Yamaoka Takashi Senpai. Then he points to what he calls a secret base, a large hotel named Hotel Love. Getting out of the car, the group of friends is shocked and wonders if this is real. Aiz, excited, says it's the sensible place to take refuge since there wouldn't be many people around, meaning there wouldn't be many phones from which the monsters could emerge. The boy, noticing Tuya's reaction, steps forward and says that he and his friend do not have a strained relationship. The hero of the bow says that wasn't what he thought. He continues and suggests that they exchange information. Seitu, irritated, tells them to do whatever they want. Confused, the two boys seem bothered by his attitude, but Nishi says not to mind the boy, who is just a little nervous. Tauta then says there's not much to say. He was returning from school when he was attacked and, trusting his speed, managed to stay ahead of the monsters. However, he ended up surrounded, and that's when Yamaoka appeared and saved him. The boy says his friend is very strong, that it was he who found the hotel, and that without him he wouldn't still be breathing. It's then that the hero of the arrows realizes he has heard of the boy with platinum hair before. Recalling, he affirms he heard that Takeshi is a hardcore delinquent, that Takeda and his gang were nothing compared to him. His crimes involved a lot of violence, drug trafficking, connections with the Yakuza, and even the murder of people. Still lost in thought, he thinks that now the rumors don't seem true as he observes the friendship Takeshi has with Aiz. Returning to the conversation, the green-eyed boy recounts that monsters were everywhere, that they went out looking for food and ended up meeting the group at the store. Rikuto then asks if it was the boys who left the warning near the cardboard box in the store, but they claim not to know what he's talking about. The hero of the steel pipe, embarrassed, says to let it go. Tauta then says that's all they know and asks if Nishi knows anything else. On their way to the interior of the hotel, the boy tells the entire story from the beginning, and the green-eyed boy feels relieved to learn there are still safe people at school. Full of hope, he asks if, by fixing Kurogane's phone, they'll be able to call for help, but Tuya, less optimistic, admits the chances are slim. Interrupting the conversation, Rikuto gets straight to the point and questions what the two boys plan to do next, adding that it's okay if they don't want to join them. Sakura then says, disappointed, that in her case she was indeed forced to go, while the boys look on puzzled. Yamaoka says he will go with them, surprising his friend Tauta. The boy continues, saying he won't hold anyone back but will be a meat shield. Nishi then says that having him along will be very helpful. Takeshi then asks his friend what he wants to do and says that if he wants to go to school, that's fine. The same responds that if Takeshi goes, he'll go too. And he adds that he's a man too and needs to do something. Kurogane, happy, says to the hero of the arrows that it's good they stopped at the convenience store, and he agrees. Contradicting the boys, Yamaoka then says their plan is very reckless since many people live in the area and the number of monsters will be much higher. Therefore, they need an entry plan to know where it's safe, where it's dangerous, and that being cautious is mandatory. He continues, saying that protecting the key player in the plan, Kuju, must be the priority. She is surprised by his statement. The duo of heroes agrees that they were hasty and don't want things to go wrong because they rushed. The platinum-haired boy then says he won't handle the details of the main plan, that he's just a soldier, and they can use him however they want. A brainstorming session then begins for the construction of the final plan. Seitu is excluded in the corner. After the meeting, everyone returns to the car and makes repeated trips, focusing solely on finding a safe route, and even with obstacles along the way, working together, they manage to overcome them. After several days, they reach their final destination. Rikuto says that if they had rushed, they would have become monster food. The girls feel relieved to have arrived, and Sakura says it feels like centuries since she's been to that place. Yamaoka notices his friend Aiza's legs trembling, and he says it's the tremor of excitement from a warrior entering battle. Everyone moves forward while Seitu lingers behind. Kurogane tells everyone to stay alert, and Nishi adds that from now on they will face challenges as they come. Outside the school, flying monsters dominate the ground and the skies. One of the students reveals that the survivors have been feeding on pieces of bread. Sitting on the floor, a boy with his hands on his head in a state of breakdown wonders how much longer they'll have to keep living like this. Two girls are talking and one of them wonders if Sakura is okay, since they haven't heard from them since everyone left. Enomoto, feeling hungry, approaches the teacher, who is sitting and devouring an entire loaf of bread. The girl, pleading, asks if it wouldn't be possible to share a little more, as everyone is very hungry. The sensei, irritated, slams his weapon on the ground and orders her to forget about it. Angrily, he stands up and shouts that they don't understand how precious food is at the moment and tells the girl to shut up and do as he says. Takeda, upset, mutters to his friend that while they are starving, Oyama is stuffing himself with food. Still trying to reason, the young girl warns that at this rate they won't last until the others return, but the man retorts that the group has probably already become monster food. Worried, Enomoto says that such a statement is a horrible thing to say and that the young people only went out to help everyone. The teacher, with a dark expression and holding the girl by the waist, says that if she does something for him, he'll make a special exception. Distressed, the girl screams for him to stop. The man laughs and says he was just trying to lighten the mood. Angrily, the bullies observe the situation. Meanwhile, as the survivors approach their limit, on the school roof, a pile of bodies is being devoured by creatures. At the same time, Rikudo's group is walking through an area that appears to be free of threats. The hero with the steel pipe questions what it all means, and Nishi responds, saying there must be a large creature somewhere. He adds that there are many types of monsters, but in areas where a very powerful aberration is present, the number of smaller creatures is lower. Such aberrations are like bosses in games. Confused, the arrow hero tries to understand why the monsters are the same as those in video games and says that thanks to that, naming them won't be a problem. Kurogane agrees with his friend and says someone must know the names. He replies that there must be some sort of governing rule. Refocusing, Yamoka states that achieving their goal is the priority for now. Sometime later, the group arrives on a floor with electronics, tools, and chemical products. Koju runs toward the shelves, extremely happy, and says she's going to live there, while Tachibana laughs. Dividing tasks, Rikudo asks Aiz and Kotone to help the tech girl, and they both agree without hesitation. Seiku and Nishi are assigned to protect the three. The steel pipe hero and the boy with platinum hair are tasked with patrolling the area. Admiring the products, Sakura starts strategizing how to modify the devices. Trying to understand, her friend questions what she's doing, and she responds that she's going to replace the CPU of the broken phone with what she just found. Smelling the solder, the girl gets excited and asks Tachibana if she feels the same, while Tauta feels embarrassed by her behavior. On guard, the two boys keep watch, while Kurogane walks through the eerily silent place, which unsettles him. That's when he finds a note stuck to a shelf saying that they eliminate intruders, which intrigues him. The boy notices that it's the same handwriting as the warning written on the floor of the first store. Suddenly, footsteps are heard, and an enormous creature that appears to be made of stone, with a glowing light where its neck would be, approaches and announces that a heat source has been detected. Reflecting and looking at the monster, the hero analyzes and concludes that it's a golem. Preparing to attack, the humanoid roars that an intruder has been identified and must be eliminated. It charges at Rikudo, who quickly counters with his weapon. However, the monster dodges the blow, surprising him with its speed. Striking again, the boy lands a solid hit on the golem. Reflecting, he realizes that the attack is ineffective against the creature. Just as Kurogane is about to be hit directly, Takeshi appears and delivers a powerful punch to the stone being. The golem falls but quickly gets back up, growling. Frustrated, Yamoka at the thought hitting the core would defeat it. Here's Rikudo suggests that they cautiously search for a weak point. Taking the lead, the brass knuckle hero instructs his friend to follow his commands, and he agrees. A hand-to-hand fight begins with the boy with platinum hair dodging blows and landing multiple punches. Watching the combat, his partner admires his strength while wondering if this is boxing. He thinks that even among professionals, it's rare to find someone so strong. But then he grows concerned upon noticing that the monster is resistant to this type of impact. The golem strikes the head of the brass knuckle hero, causing him to start bleeding. This makes his friend realize the situation is dire, as they are losing their advantage. Having a memory lapse, Kurogane finally understands what the note meant and shouts for Takeshi to retreat. Using all his strength, the boy strikes the head of the stone being with his steel pipe. The monster shatters completely, leaving Yamoka puzzled about what just happened. Asking what's going on and whether the boys are okay, the rest of the group comes running. Nishi questions what happened to that pile of stones, and his friend responds that it was a golem. Shocked, the hero of the arrows asks if Rikudo defeated it. He replies that he did, remembering a game where the answer was in the monster's head. Tuya, excited, says the adventure is becoming more and more fantastic. Seiyu tries to downplay the victory, asking if it was just a small creature, but Takeshi denies it. He then praises the steel pipe hero, saying he's impressed by his ability to read movements and notice the letters on the monster's head using his kinetic vision. He concludes by saying the boy is someone he can trust to help, and his friend thanks him. Aiz appears and also praises his friend, saying he wants Yamoka to trust him too. Shinjiro shows irritation. The Bao hero then says that now that the enemy is defeated, everyone can return to work. Noticing the thoughtful expression on Kurogane's face, the boy asks what's wrong, and his friend responds that the creature seems too weak to be the boss. A large purple sphere begins rushing toward the group at high speed. Sakura, sensing danger, asks if the noise doesn't sound like it's getting closer. The giant sphere suddenly appears above the escalator, catching everyone off guard. Nishi wonders if it's another boulder, but the blonde girl, confused, says it doesn't make sense since they're inside a store. Before Tachibana is hit, the steel pipe hero saves her. The sphere then reveals a large glowing purple eye. Standing up, it transforms into a massive humanoid with the eye in the middle of its chest. Rikudo tells his bow-wielding friend that this one is definitely the boss, and he, sweating profusely, stammers, saying it's bad news. Speaking the same words as the smaller stone golem, the purple creature says it needs to eliminate the intruders. With its massive arm, it tries to crush the group but hits the ground instead, creating a large hole. Due to the creature's size, the steel pipe hero says it will be very difficult to hit the letters on the golem's head. Tuya steps forward and shouts for his friend to leave it to him. Then, shooting his arrows, he tries to hit the engraved letter on the stone. Without success, the boy realizes he couldn't even scratch the surface, and Kuju, terrified, questions whether it's fair. Roaring loudly, the golem seems to prepare to shoot a purple energy beam. The blonde girl notices what's about to happen, and the bow hero yells for everyone to get out of there. Kurogane, panicking, shouts for everyone to run. They all start running desperately, and that's when the monster releases its power toward what seems to be the steel pipe hero. A large hole opens in the ground where the beam hit, now ablaze. Fortunately, 4 of them manage to hide behind a wall, panting and terrified, while Rikudo is shocked by the creature's power. Tachibana asks if Nishi is okay, but unfortunately, her friend, holding him, says the attack left him severely injured. The girl wonders if her other friends are okay, and Rikudo, despite being worried, says that for now they need to do what they can. The boy suggests everyone head to the underground parking lot, and that if the others are okay, they can meet them there. Seitu, however, dislikes the idea. Irritated and afraid, he starts yelling that there's no way to reach the stairs without the monster seeing them. Kurogane, however, agrees and says there's no way to get there without leaving his friend behind, something he absolutely won't do. The creature keeps approaching, making a lot of noise. Confused, they watch as the steel pipe hero takes action. Leaving the hiding spot, he decides to face the monster head-on. While distracting it, he signals for the others to run toward the stairs. Thinking about the creature's attack as he runs, he concludes that it reacts to heat and aggression. So for the others reach the stairs, they must throw the flare he gave to his friends. This way, if it distracts the golem even for a brief moment, he'll be able to get out of there safely. However, if the monster sees them, everything will be over. This is the only way for everyone to get out of that situation unharmed. Kotone shouts to let them know she's ready, and Rikudo gives the signal for her to throw the flare. As the girl is about to throw it, her boyfriend interferes and the flare rolls down the staircase, ruining the plan. In a panic, Tachibana questions Seitu, who says he had to do it because the monster could have turned on them before she threw the object. The monster then hits Kurogane directly. Slamming against the wall, the boy cries out in pain. His worried friend screams for him, and he tells her to stay where she is. He says not to worry about him and to get out of there to take care of Nishi. He also warns the girl's boyfriend that he better take care of her, and Shinjiro mutters angrily. Cynically, the boy says they should leave and that it's too late for Rikudo, which angers the girl. Surprising everyone, she punches the boy in the face. He falls to the ground, shocked as she runs to help the steel pipe hero. Facing the golem, which seems to be charging its power, the boy, panting, appears to confront imminent doom. Alone, the boy says he's given his all since that fateful day, but in the end, he can't do anything, and he remembers his late brother. He comes to the conclusion that his brother was right. Kotone appears and, with great agility, grabs the boy, pulling him out of the path of the beam. Dazed, he doesn't understand what's happening as the girl clings to him and they fall to the ground. He warns her that what she did was very irresponsible. Grabbing his collar, she shouts, questioning how he could give up like that. And she continues, saying that he's not like this. Confused, he asks how she knows. Rikudo then remembers that in childhood he had saved the girl from a group of boys and that no matter what, he kept fighting. Standing up with his steel pipe in hand, he prepares to fight because he realizes that, in the end, they are still alive. An arrow suddenly strikes the monster, which looks back and sees the group reunited, including Nishi, who seems to be better. The sight makes Kurogane and Tachibana happy. Ai says he was worried when they left them downstairs, but that they're okay, and Takeshi apologizes for the delay. Thus, everyone prepares for a massive counterattack. Tachibana and Rikudo stand in front of a monster. The boy tries to strike his opponent with his weapon and succeeds. Nishi is accompanied by another man and watches the scene while the boy with the sword says he's thinking of retreating but isn't sure if he should. A loud noise occurs. There's someone knocking on the door, which grabs the attention of the people in the room. They realize it's the small golems coming up from the lower floor. The noise intensifies and scares Sakura, who defines it as a desperate situation. Nishi asks Rikudo what they should do and says that if things continue like this, they're finished. Quickly, the protagonist tells the young man to keep shooting, and if the boy keeps shooting at the same target, he'll succeed. The boy with the arrows calls the monster an idiot and asserts that it won't last much longer. Rikudo says he needs to defeat it because he's still alive. The other students watch the scene, terrified. The word alive catches Sakura's attention. Stammering, the girl calls out to Kurogane Nishi. She states that she might be able to do something but needs a little time. Kuju says they might not believe her, but she can manage to defeat the monster. Rikudo encourages his friend and says he believes in her, so he'll buy her some time. With tears in her eyes, Sakura knows what she needs to do. She gets emotional hearing the boy say he trusts her, and he confirms, saying she's not the type of person who would lie. The protagonist calls Nishi to come closer to him, and the boy quickly obeys. Suspicious, a blonde boy asks if Kuju can really do what she's thinking, and she says yes, because Rikudo trusts her, and because of that, she can't fail. Yamaoka says he'll help the boys and asks Eyes to assist the girls. The monster is on the verge of attacking everyone in its frustration. Sakura crouches down and starts preparing the chemical potions. Kotone approaches and asks if her friend is okay, noting that she's trembling a lot, but the young girl tells her to be quiet. In a quick move, the monster tries to attack Kurogane, but he dodges. Nishi asks Kuju to act quickly. The girl says she's almost finished and explains how the experiment works, doubting she'll manage it. She recalls Rikudo's words, saying he trusts her. Quickly, the girl adds the final ingredient. The potion is ready, much to the girl's joy. Sakura warns Kotone never to mess with chemicals, as they are very dangerous. The next step is to throw the product at the monster's head, which will defeat it. Tabashina asks how they could hit the monster's head, leaving Kuju desperate. The little girl calls herself an idiot, realizing she hadn't thought of that, but Eyes grabs the product. The boy runs with it in hand and asks if all he has to do is throw it at the monster's head. He says he's on the baseball team and will manage it. Sakura urges him to be careful with the liquid, leaving everyone anxious. The giant opponent approaches quickly. Nishi becomes frustrated as he sees the monster getting closer. Suddenly, an explosion occurs right on the monster's head. A sword-wielding boy is startled, wondering if that's as far as they've gotten. Eyes arrives running with the chemical product and apologizes for the delay. He says it's a special delivery directly from Kanju. In one swift motion, he throws the vial toward the monster's head. Kotone asks her friend what she added, and Kuju explains it was just some chemical reactions. But she admits she added nitrate and sulfuric acid to glycerin, creating nitroglycerin. Before she finishes explaining, a massive explosion occurs. Everyone nearby is flung away. Eyes watches, his eyes shining with amazement at the feat. With smoke rising, the monster remains standing, and everyone observes it. The baseball boy questions Kuju about the explosion, and she explains about the nitroglycerin. She continues explaining the component and her invention, comparing it to dynamite. Sweating nervously, everyone looks at her with half-desperate expressions. They scold her, saying she should have explained what it was beforehand. With a shout, someone calls for Sakura. The boys watch the scene of the explosion, and Rikudo concludes that, thanks to it, the area is now completely charred. Nishi says they defeated the monster, but warns it was a bit reckless on Kuju's part, who promises to be more careful next time. The protagonist heads toward the door while being watched by his bow-wielding friend. He warns there might be danger if the boy opens the door. However, upon opening it, the dude finds all the golems reduced to dust, and Rikudo says he hasn't heard any banging on the door since the explosion. Nishi wonders if the monsters exploded because their leader was defeated, and his friend believes so, even though it doesn't make much sense. The protagonist goes to Sakura and asks if she managed to grab the parts for the phone, and the girl says only the bare minimum. He thanks her, saying that thanks to her, everyone was saved, leaving the girl emotional. Concerned, the bow boy says they shouldn't stay in the area long, and everyone decides to leave as quickly as possible. A kiss happens. Upon re-entering the room, Rituko notices that Seigu tried to kiss Kotone, but the girl slapped him. The ex tries to explain, saying he had no choice, but the girl is furious. She says she doesn't care and hopes the boy won't come near her again. Nishi approaches and asks what happened between the two. Seigo leaves the room despondent, walking past his friends, unable to believe what just occurred. He screams and runs up the stairs. Realizing the danger, the bow boy shouts for him not to go too far because there's still danger in the building. Ignoring him, Seido keeps running upstairs, thinking only of Kurogan. On the verge of a breakdown, the boy enters one of the rooms, pacing back and forth, thinking that Kotone belongs only to him, and that it's all Rituko's fault. He adds that Rituko should die and kicks several nearby boxes. Clearing the boxes out of the way, Seiko discovers a coffin with a sword embedded in it. A note attached to the object warns that it's sealed and not to touch it, leaving the boy puzzled as to why it's in the storage room. He examines the scene and everything within it, from the coffin to the blade and the note warning not to open it. In a reckless act, he removes the silver blade. A sound starts emanating from inside the coffin. The boy looks in shock as a skull appears, emitting red lightning from its eyes. Desperate, he wonders what is happening, but the skeletal hand moves toward him quickly. Nishi is outside and says he warned the boy about the dangers of venturing alone through the building while searching and calling for Seitu. Someone approaches, catching their attention. The two boys look and realize it's the person they were searching for, and they ask if he's been there the whole time. Annoyed by the situation, the arrow-wielding boy scolds him and tells Kotone's ex to at least respond when they call him. After the scolding, the boy says they should all head back since they've done what they came to do. Nishi notices that the boy is in a good mood and finds it strange. The white-haired man accompanying them wonders if he was imagining things for not noticing the boy's presence behind them the entire time. Later, Everyone returns to the base and Sakura says she already feels like the place is her own home. Elsewhere, someone is in front of a computer, celebrating having achieved something. It's Kuju, and everyone is happy to see that she has managed to use the cell phone. After working on the device and a computer, the girl finally gets online. Ai says it's incredible what she just did. Rikudo asks her to check if there's any information about nearby survivors or emergencies. She checks social media and says that since the day the monsters appeared, there have been no updates from anyone. Something catches Kuju's attention. Someone in the city of Amishima posted asking for help a few days ago, suggesting they might be survivors. The protagonist says the location is far, but not so far that they couldn't reach it. Koton says there's a glimmer of hope after the turbulent days, and Seidu overhears everything nearby. Close to the scene, the boy feels uneasy hearing the conversation, and a shadow is shown near him. Nishi states that tomorrow they will inform everyone at the school about going to Amishima to search for more survivors. Meanwhile, noises come from the school building. It's coming from one of the laboratories, and the sounds grow louder. Owen is lying down, and Uyama tries to attack her, with only their shadows shown. She pleads to be let go while the man, holding a knife, says it doesn't matter what she does. Nothing good will come of it. Terrifyingly, the man standing over the girl says it's a beautiful sight he's seeing. He adds that it's like heaven on earth. A flashback is shown. Several bird-shaped monsters approach the school. They go to the rooftop and eat the remains of the corpses left there. Noises occur, and someone asks about Uyama. Two boys approach the teacher and ask if he's trying to starve them. The other students notice the tension and wonder what they should do. One of the boys shouts that he asked for food to be brought, and Uyama responds that there wasn't any. He's called a liar, and they accuse him of hiding food. Takeda, holding a baseball bat, says that if things continue this way, there's no telling what he might do. Oyama tells the boys to forget about it and declares that he won't allow them to act like that under any circumstances. As a teacher, he says his decisions are absolute and everyone must shut up and obey him. Angry, one of the students punches the older man. He falls to the ground from the force of the blow, and the argument continues with demands about the food. Oyama remains silent, and the student says that's one of the things he hates most. Losing control, the boy continues cursing the teacher and attempts to hit him again. Blood splatters across the room. Nishi, Rikudo, and Koton notice what's happening and are shocked. The teacher stabs the aggressor in the abdomen with a knife. Screaming in pain, the boy is paralyzed by what has just happened. Desperate, the protagonist shouts at the sight of the scene as Uyama pulls out the knife. Takeda starts trembling with fear as the man moves toward him. Without hesitation, the teacher keeps approaching the other student. He states that bad people like them need more disciplined education and attempts to stab the blonde boy. More blood splatters across the room. Back in the present, Oyama is shown carrying the girl from the room on his shoulder. He takes her to a room where a group of people is alive and others are dead, announcing that he has returned. Mocking, the man asks why the other students are cowering in the corner. Terrifyingly, the teacher throws the girl to the ground and says she's back home again. Still holding the knife, he declares that the girl was exceptionally beautiful. He approaches Kasahara and says she will be next. Terrified, the girl says that instead of her, he could take Riko. Her friend becomes outraged upon realizing that Kasahara is offering her, and Kasahara retorts that Riko is just another sycophant. Impatient, Oyama stabs the knife into the ground, scaring both girls. He calls the two young women and says they are both good for listening to him. Tense, the two agree. Hayashi approaches, but the boy is trembling with fear. When questioned about what he is doing, he insists it's nothing. Oyama warns the boy not to try anything, pointing to the other dead students. The boy says he never even thought of it, and the teacher calls him an obedient child. Quickly, the man grabs Kasahara by the arm. He also grabs Kasamoto. The girls desperately cry for help, begging someone to save them. Desperate, the brown-haired girl questions what kind of world she's living in. Without further words, Oyama drags the girl down the school corridor. During the journey, she curses the man. He slaps her heart and says she must call him sensei. Grabbing the girl by the hair, the teacher says she needs some extra education. Still mocking her, he ridicules her earlier question about the world, saying it's paradise while the girl claims it's hell. The girl continues in despair, screaming that the world is trash and might as well end. As she's dragged by her hair, the young woman wonders how she never realized this before. Oyama reaches his destination and freezes in front of the girl. Something catches the man's attention, and he looks out the window. He sees his car arriving and knows very well what that means. Recruiter's group has returned to the school. Nishi says he hopes they brought some peace of mind to the people still there. A young girl observing notices it's Kurogane and the others and celebrates that they'll survive and escape the teacher's threats. Oyama turns pale and says it's impossible for the group to have survived, unsure of what to do. Not knowing what to do, the man claims it doesn't matter and says he'll eliminate the group. He believes the kingdom he's building doesn't need Rikudo. The group stands outside the school, shouting for the others that they've returned and asking them to open the door. No one responds and Nishi grows concerned. They start banging on the door while the teacher watches from one of the windows. The man returns to the room where the other students are, still shocked that the group survived. One of the students quietly calls out for Kurogane. Oyama says the group cannot discover that he killed the students. Otherwise, it will be the end of him. Thinking deeply, the teacher concludes the group doesn't know anything yet. Moreover, among the group, only Nishi and Kurogane are the hardest to deal with. He decides that if he can handle those two, Kuju and Tachibana can also be taken into his harem. Maliciously, the man moves toward the girls. Dominating, he threatens them, saying if they value their lives, they shouldn't try anything funny. Outside, the group stands still as Nishi remarks how strangely quiet everything is and suggests something might be happening. He asks Rakuto what they should do. Determined, the protagonist agrees that something is wrong and says they should break in. The idea is to use the car to break the barrier and enter the building. Nishi calls it a crazy and risky plan. Before they can act, Oyama opens the door and greets the students. Everyone is happy to see him alive and well. Fading friendliness, the teacher asks how things were outside the building. Unaware of the danger, Nishi says they managed to recover Sakura's phone and found survivors along the way. Aiz appears and says it's been a long time since he last saw the teacher. Oyama feels uneasy knowing Aiz will also pose a problem for him and that now there are 3 obstacles in his way. Trying to appear calm, the man says he's happy to see the boy alive. He plans to deal with Kurogane and Nishi first. Putting his plan into action, the man says he needs to talk to the boys in private and ask them to follow him. Sensing something is wrong, Nishi suggests the whole group should go. The teacher says it's fine but insists he'd like to speak to the 2 boys alone first. Nishi agrees and calls for Rakuto. The duo follows Oyama, apologizing and saying they'll return shortly. Aiz suggests that in the meantime they bring the supplies inside the school. Stopping to think, Koton realizes that Seitu is not with them. She asks if the boy might have entered the building without them. Meanwhile, Oyama leads the 2 boys inside the building. Nishi notices something strange and questions if they aren't going too far. Feigning ignorance, the man says it's just around the corner and they'll arrive, while thinking that if he gets the boys' bow, the victory will be his. Everyone keeps walking. They arrive in a classroom and don't understand why. Nishi asks them to start the conversation while Oyama fiddles with a fire extinguisher. Before anything else, the man sprays the extinguisher's phone toward the students. The 2 complain that their eyes hurt while the man laughs. Unable to see properly, the teacher takes advantage and rushes at the boys with a knife. Quickly, Rituko defends himself with his bat. A hand-to-hand fight between the 2 begins. Kurogane says it was a good attempt, but his suspicions never fail. The protagonist states that he always knew who Oyama really was and the man is confused about how he knew. He explains that he saw blood on the teacher's shirt, and when he last spoke with the man, the blood wasn't there. Kurogane goes on to say he doesn't know what happened while they were gone, but now he's sure the man has crossed the line. Scared, Oyama begins to stutter. The student grabs the man by the shirt and says that one day he'll be judged for what he's done. Annoyed, the teacher tries to respond and quickly attempts to attack the boy. He throws a punch, but Rituko defends himself and sends the man flying across the room. Meanwhile, the birds remain on the school's rooftop. Seigo enters the location and observes the scene of bodies being eaten. The boy says this is exactly what he needed. Without hesitation, he gives orders for things to begin definitively. Inside the school, Tachibana and Sakura enter and find the girls tied up, starting to untie them. Everyone is completely happy to be freed from the ropes. Koton asks if those people are the only survivors. Kuju feels sad seeing the state many of her friends are in. Although freed, everyone says they lived through a nightmare in there. Tachibana also begins to cry at the sight of the situation and laments that it had to be a moment when they saw a glimmer of hope. She sees the bodies on the ground and declares it's all too cruel. The boys throw the tied-up teacher on the ground and ask how he could do such a thing. Nishi is outraged and says the teacher shouldn't have done that. Instead, he should have helped the other students. Without fear, Oyama laughs in the boy's face. Mockingly, the man asks if the boy really thinks he will be saved. He says the boy needs to face reality. He states that the world is no longer the same, that hope doesn't exist, and that everyone will eventually die eaten by monsters. The man continues, saying that's why he did what he did, to have a little fun before it all ends since he won't be punished. Recklessly, he suggests the boys should do the same as him and kidnap Tachibana and Kuju. To the girl's horror, Nishi tells the man to shut up and punches him. Interrupting the blows, Rakuto asks his friend to just ignore the man. He says that paying attention to him is a waste of time and energy. The boy concludes that they won't be able to take the teacher with them. Hearing the conversation, a girl asks what they mean by that. Nishi says he forgot to mention it, but everyone must be saved. And thanks to the recovered phone, they were able to locate more survivors. The other students feel hopeful, calling their ray of light. Oyama becomes desperate upon hearing those words. Panicking, the teacher begins begging for forgiveness and pleads not to be left behind. He continues to beg, claiming he regrets his actions. Koton calls him bold for thinking he would be saved after everything he's done. Rakuto says they'll decide what to do with the teacher later, as they need to focus on other matters now. Nishi ends up agreeing with this. Suddenly, a blue light appears outside the building, surprising everyone. The boys are shocked and don't understand what's happening. At that moment, they look out the window. Numerous blue beams of light appear as birds fly and monsters take over the area. These monsters have faces resembling lizards, goats, and other animals. Nishi asks what it could be and whether the enemies are coming out of the lights, and Rikudo says it's the same phenomenon as before. Sakura wonders how this is possible, considering no one else has a cell phone. The protagonist orders everyone to get ready. Nishi is frightened, stating that the number of monsters keeps growing. Kotone asks what she should do. The birds feeding on the corpses begin entering the building, shattering the windows. Everyone panics at the horrifying scene. They try to defend themselves as best as they can. They urge Eyes to quickly get the people out of there and run. Rikudo says he won't die there and defends himself with his bat. He manages to strike the bird with great force. Dozens of monsters appear on the ground in front of the school. Inside the building, Takeshi and the others are fighting them to clear a path. A man asks Tudo where the others are, noticing he's alone, and the boy apologizes, saying they got separated somewhere. While still apologizing, a goblin appears at the window to attack him, but Nishi is quicker and shoots it with an arrow, telling him to focus on surviving. One of the winged monsters appears to attack the girls but bypasses Tachibana and heads towards Sakura. Frightened, Sakura freezes, but Rikudo intervenes and strikes the monster before it can do anything. He asks if she's okay, and she shyly responds that she is. The girl at the top of the stairs wonders if the monster ignored her. Nishi, worried, asks his friend what they'll do since the ground floor is infested with monsters. Looking down and seeing the creatures climbing, he remarks that at this rate they won't make it. The boy says if there's no way down, they should go up. He then shouts for everyone to run to the roof, and the archer asks if they're back to square one. Running up the stairs, Kurogen tells everyone not to split up and that they will survive together, and they all agree. Later, Hayashi is running from a giant spider, screaming that he doesn't want to die. Looking back, he realizes this is the end for him, but doesn't want it to end there. Suddenly, a screen appears in front of him, stating that his role as a hero and asking if he will accept the adventure, with options for yes or no below. The boy hears a voice in his head and doesn't understand how he could be a hero. Shortly after, another message says the evil-slaying sword is being generated. Seeing the spider attacking him, he grabs the sword and slices it in half. The girls arrive shortly after and find the boy. He wonders if this is his power. Sakura celebrates behind him. They start praising him, and he becomes embarrassed. Rikudo and Nishi arrive shortly after, also praising him and celebrating. He thanks everyone and says he can protect them now. However, it was all an illusion, and in reality, Hayashi is in the spider's mouth, being devoured while repeating the same words. On another floor, one of the girls is being grabbed and cries for help from her friend. The friend says they're not friends and wishes for her to perish. Shortly after, another monster appears behind the girl and attacks her before she notices. The other, witnessing the scene, wonders what kind of world this is. In the bathrooms, the teacher says he wants to live and needs to survive to build his paradise. He is tied up in one of the stalls. Enemono opens the door, saying she's found him, and he is startled to see her. She says that even tied up, he made it there, and that ending him is as hard as killing a cockroach. She then asks if he has any dream he wants to fulfill, and the man is confused. The girl says her dream was to find a true friend, yet marry and build a happy family. Holding a knife, she tells Ueyama she wanted to include him in that dream, but she can't anymore because he took that away from her and corrupted her. Terrified, the teacher begins begging. The man pleads for forgiveness, saying he'll take responsibility as she attacks him. She slashes his chest and he falls. Smiling, the girl says he will indeed take responsibility, not just for her, but for the entire class. He is left on his own, surrounded by ghosts telling him they will end him. On the floor, the teacher begs to be spared but is attacked again by the girl. Crying, she says that with this he's paid the price at least a little and that nothing matters anymore. However, she doesn't notice a monster behind her. Rikudo spots the rooftop door and alerts everyone. Nishi asks what they'll do once they're up there, and the boy responds they'll figure it out when they get there. Opening the door, they find Seitu, who says he's been waiting for them. Everyone is happy to see him, and the archer asks if he's okay. He says all the actors are gathered, but he's been waiting for Kurogen. The boy thanks everyone for reaching the rooftop and escorting Kotone. Nishi, confused, asks about the escort and whether he hit his head, but his friend says something is wrong. Smiling, he comments that they were being cold, and with the monster behind him, he says he was on their side. Sakura, upon seeing the monster, begins screaming, asking what it is. Rikudo comments that the monster is a type of lich, and his friend responds that they're common in fantasy and asks why it was with the student. Segido hears the conversation and replies that the monster was an ally, that in exchange it could use his body, and the lich granted him power, that this flaw existed in the world, a summoning system. Smiling, he says that's not all they need to know. More importantly, he can make a circle appear in the sky. Then a stream of binary code descends, bringing several monsters to the rooftops, surrounding everyone and terrifying them. The group panics, wondering what to do. Kurogen realizes it's the same phenomenon that happened some time ago. Enveloped by monsters, Seitu asks if they can see his power and claims he has obtained the technique to control monsters. He explains that he can control small monsters, but soon will be able to dominate the more powerful ones. This means that, as long as he's there, they no longer need to fear monsters. Looking at Kotone, he comments that he made her worry, but everything is fine now and she doesn't need to be afraid anymore. He tells her she doesn't need Kurogen to protect her anymore. However, the girl feels even more frightened. Extending his arms along with the lich, he asks the girl to live with him in this new world. She refuses, leaving the boy confused, but Tachibana says it's hard to believe and asks if this is truly his power. The girl asks if he was the one who summoned the monsters that just attacked the students, and he admits it. He then comments that they attacked one of the girls in his class and probably all the others. Seiga dismissively says he doesn't need anyone else but her. Nervous, the girl says she really didn't want to say this, but he is no longer human. Crying, she says they've encountered all kinds of monsters so far, but he is the worst of them all. The other students approach to support her. Crying and controlled, Seidu says Koton is wrong, repeating the word wrong over and over. Still repeating the word, the boy screams, transforming into a vortex and emitting such a strong wind that all the students must shield themselves. When the spinning stops, it's clear the lich has fully taken over his body, replacing his head and arms with its own. It screams at the girl, accusing her of preferring Kurogane, but says she should be his. Then, yelling that he doesn't need her, it commands the monsters to attack. Rikudo grabs his steel pipe and orders Kuju and Tachibana to stay back. He manages to block one of the attacks, but the girl, worried upon seeing him, doesn't notice the Oni behind her until Sakura warns her. The boy rushes toward them to stop the attack and succeeds, but his pipe is dented by the force of the impact. Then the monster throws him backward. Koton screams his name as he is hurled against the wall. Nishi, concerned, shouts his name, and the girls run toward him. Getting closer, the girls worry upon seeing him in such a state. Touching his face, Tachibana notices he isn't breathing. Kurogan hears someone calling his name and realizes he's in his room, confused because he was sure he was at school. He hears someone mocking him for calling that room his and turns to see Serato at the door. Serato says it's been a long time since they've seen each other. Back at the school, Koton screams his name and begs him to listen to her. Hugging him, she cries in desperation while the other students stand in shock. Nishi, fighting the monsters and concerned, asks if this is real and hopes it isn't true. As he laments, a monster moves to attack him, but Takeshi pushes it away with a punch using his brass knuckles. The boy calls his name but gets no response at first. Without looking at him, he tells him not to give up, calling him a leader. He says that no matter the circumstances, they must keep fighting until the end because that's the kind of man Kurogane is. Everyone is astonished and moved by his words. Nishi says he was right. Rikudo was always like that. No matter how hopeless the situation, he never gave up. And if he were to give up on surviving, he wouldn't be able to face him. With this in mind, he continues shooting his arrows at the monsters. Tauda begins assisting in the attack. Sato, now under Lich's control, tells them to forget it, saying that Kurogane was no longer among them. He declares that Kurogane's heart had stopped and comments that Koton should know better than anyone since she wanted to be a doctor. Hearing those words, she decides to help the boy. Adjusting his body, she begins performing mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, refusing to give up so easily. If the impact had stopped his heart, it couldn't be too late. Sakura thinks that everyone is doing what they can, so she must do something too. But unlike the time at the golem, she can no longer make dynamite and wonders what she could do. She notices the bent steel pipe on the ground and thinking about the type of monster the lich is, concludes that she might be able to do something. However, she has no scientific evidence and isn't sure if it will work. Beholding the object, she comments hopefully that there's nothing left but to try. Seitu, watching everyone, asks what's so special about Rikudo. Hitting him with an arrow, Nishi responds that they like him, that they value him. Tauda tells Seidu that jealousy isn't cool. Irritated, the lich says he'll send them all to join Rikudo, and the monsters charge toward them. In the room, Kurogane's brother steps on him, saying, "Serves you right." The boy turns his face to look at him, pressing harder on his head. Serato tells him not to look at him like that because he's already dead. He reminds Kurogane of the lessons he taught him since they were kids, that his existence has no meaning and that he can't do anything. While beating him, he says no one wants him, no one loves him, that he's a loser, trash, a worthless man who should just lie down and die. As he's beaten, Rikudo thinks the man is right. He has no value, no meaning. He thinks he should stand up and try his best, but in the end, he does nothing. He's heard it all before and is exhausted. He just wants to return to being someone without thoughts or emotions. Amid his thoughts, he hears his name being called more than once, and a girl grabs his arm. It's Tachibana, who tells him not to go back to being alone because everyone is waiting for him. She sees their friends happy in casual clothes. Still smiling, she asks her friend to return, her eyes filling with tears. In the room, the boy grabs his brother's foot before he can kick him again. For a long time, he might have thought about staying there until the end, but not anymore. Now he has a place to return to. Irritated, Serato punches him, but Rikudo fights back, apologizing as he says that no matter what Serato claims, he is alive, and he punches Serato in the face, with his face shattering into pieces. Serato comments that it's impossible, questioning how Rikudo could do it. Kurogane declares that he'll keep trying for as long as he lives, watching as the broken pieces of his brother's face fall before his eyes.